There is so much happening right now in the PC hardware news. We have Nvidia's RTX 50 series prices improving in Europe as the euro is strengthening against the US dollar. As the flip side of that, though, is that prices in the US are not necessarily great. For example, PlayStation 5 pricing was just announced as increasing by $50 on all the relevant models, citing navigating a challenging economic environment. Didn't call out specifically tariffs or the strength of the dollar or anything like that, but that's probably what's going on here. I don't remember seeing another console generation where prices were increasing this late into the generation. It's kind of crazy and unprecedented, but there was tons of other Nvidia news recently with the Geforce NOW service getting upgraded to an RTX 5080 tier with AMD Zen 5 CPUs, enhanced visual quality, and even 90 FPS Steam Deck support. I'm actually interested in trying out Geforce NOW on the Steam Deck. It seems like potentially an interesting application for that. Nvidia's AI assistant project G-Assist has cut its memory use by 40%. I've seen some people misinterpreting these headlines and thinking that using the AI is now reducing your GPU's VRAM by usage by 40%, but no, it's that using the AI has a VRAM cost, but that cost has been reduced by 40%, but is still higher than just not using it. But because its memory footprint has been reduced, RTX GPUs with 6 GB of VRAM plus are now supported, whereas I think previously it required 12. We've also seen a global DLSS overrides now available in the Nvidia app, as well as smooth motion frames coming to 40 series GPUs. It used to be a 50 series exclusive, and I already produced a video yesterday explaining how to use all of that, all of the details, and trying it out for myself. We've also seen RTX Hair is coming in September to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, this is just another Nvidia technology. The idea is to improve hair rendering, but also there's something interesting for 50 series users specifically in the fact that they support a new primitive using spheres instead of triangles, which Nvidia claims is a better fit for the shape of hair and reduces the amount of geometry needed to render each strand of hair. But again, that part of this will only be supported on 50 series, although RTX Hair in general will have broader support. Now, last big news for Nvidia is that there is a Borderlands 4 bundle coming with RTX 5070 cards or better, so not coming to 5060 Ti's or 5060s or 5050s. Now, there's a lot more to talk about here, but first, so many people make a huge mistake in upgrading their PC setup, and that's not thinking enough about their VPN. First, I reject any VPN service that does not have a strict and independently audited no logs policy, which is why I'm so happy that Surfshark has just passed yet another audit this June, and a huge thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. Using my code OwenDaniel at checkout gets you 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Surfshark can be useful for so many things, like encrypting your private internet traffic for increased security and privacy, but my personal favorite is accessing content from other regions. Last time I visited my sister in Canada, I was blown away with the different content libraries available on my favorite streaming services. They had shows I don't usually get at home and vice versa. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in 100 different countries. Just select one and the website you are connecting to thinks you're in that country. It's like traveling the globe in just one click. There's so many other benefits like avoiding regional price discrimination, which saves you money, accessing regionally censored content, and more. With Surfshark's 30-day money-back guarantee, there is really no catch. Follow the link in the video description and/or pinned comment, or use code OwenDaniel at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Now, not to be outdone by Nvidia's Borderlands 4 bundle, Intel is actually firing off with a Battlefield 6 bundle. Now, this comes with CPUs and GPUs. It looks like Core 13, 14, and 200 CPUs, as well as Arc Alchemist and Battlemage GPUs. So if you're interested in Battlefield 6 and you're looking for a system upgrade, according to my testing, CPU upgrades are gonna be a big deal. And hey, maybe if you're buying into a new CPU, find a good deal on a Intel one, get the game bundled in with it. Could end up being a good value add. But in Intel news, Intel has been struggling and there have been massive layoffs. And that can lead to top talent not really wanting to stick around with the company and competitors actively recruiting them. And in other big Intel news, we've had the fact that the Trump administration has at least announced considering getting a 10% stake in Intel. But since that initial news broke, there have also been reports of the US government mulling a stake in other competitors like Micron, Samsung, and TSMC as well. For me in general, it's just been really interesting seeing, like, I follow this space in the interest of video games, but now it's just on the forefront of, geopolitics and national security and all of that. And it's been crazy seeing how, that's affected, CPUs and GPUs and chips. Now, in other gaming-related updates, AMD's FidelityFX SDK 2.0 has finally launched. Now, this is a really big deal in that this is the one that is going to make the support of their neural rendering technologies easier to implement for developers. So people have been waiting a while to get this FSR4 SDK out there onto GPU Open, and it is now here. But again, while FSR4 is the highlight that we have right now, the idea behind this is that this is going to make the way to streamline the implementations of AMD's FSR Redstone and other future machine learning-based technology deployments. So remember that FSR Redstone is supposed to be coming in the second half of 2025, although we don't have a specific release date. The fact that we're now getting this SDK out there starts to, feel like we're getting close to that point. So this should give us competitors soon to NVIDIA technologies like ray reconstruction with AMD's ray regeneration, an AI denoiser that should help with their path tracing implementations, but also with the introduction of FSR4, we got a upscaling machine learning update for FSR, and it made a huge difference. But the frame generation implementation was not updated to a machine learning-based frame generation technique. However, this is also laying the groundworks for the update to a machine learning-based frame generation technique, but that is not out yet. This is, again, making the upgrade easy to do once it is out. Now, this does include an update to the analytical frame generation technique to FSR 3.1.5, but all of this is trying to make it so that these technologies, if they're implemented using this, FSR, FidelityFX 2.0 SDK, that it should support the driver level upgrades to the latest versions of the technologies, so that the game developers should not have to go back and implement new versions of the technologies through patches. It should be able to just be updated from the from the driver level end, which I think is a good thing and should help the future rollouts of newer technologies become a lot smoother. AMD FSR 4.0.2 is again being highlighted here as being, a huge increase over the FSR 3 stuff, but in general, they are reminding people that you do require an RX 9000 series GPU for that FSR 4 support. However, there was an interesting thing highlighted in some articles stating that the GitHub repository had briefly included some files that were not intended to be present, and those have now been removed, but caught by Uzi38 on Twitter, they did have a post saying there's so many copies of it out there that there's little point hiding what's in them, except from maybe the unfinished attempts at an int8 FSR4 model, claiming that this is confirmation for sure that AMD was interested in creating a watered-down version of the model for less capable hardware. So in other words, some of the files that were posted and now removed seem to be indicating that AMD was working on getting FSR4 in some version, maybe not as good, working on older hardware, but it seems to be unfinished. And again, their latest posts on the matter are indicating RX 9000 series requirements. Now, there have been interesting updates in the Linux space on emulating the the support onto older hardware. However, the performance of that has been improving, but is still not particularly amazing. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with that space. Now, in further AMD news, we have seen an interview with AMD representatives at Quasar Zone, I believe it was. I'm seeing it reported here at WCCF Tech, asking about whether the 9060 non-XT version could ever see a separate launch rather than just being a OEM and system integrator model for pre-built systems. Here's the direct quote. Quasar Zone asks, you recently quietly released the RX 9060, but you haven't disclosed the release region or price. Some reports say this is for the complete body finished product, so OEM and SI only. Is this true? Is there room for the product to be sold globally and through retail channels in the future? AMD's response is, yes, this product is intended as a complete body finished product and is not available to general retail channels at this time. Since the launch of RDNA 4, the percentage of AMD choices for components in the complete body finished product market has increased tremendously and interest is growing. I think it would be good to talk about the situation in Korea. Again, Quasar Zone is a Korean outlet. Since the launch of RDNA 4 in the Korean market, the business has exploded and the sales rate based on RX 9000 series has been very high. I think it is meaningful that Korean gamers are satisfied with the second choice and are choosing AMD. Therefore, I am very proud of this achievement in Korea. Not only individual purchase, but also Ryzen plus Radeon combination complete body finished product companies are also achieving great success. In that respect, the RX 9060 is part of an effort to provide another tool to help OEMs grow their businesses. We may one day offer our product to retail channels, but not now. So really, this is just kind of a leaving it open. So we may in the future, but definitely not right now. Anyway, so they're at least leaving the consideration open. Now, really though, I was looking at it and like the performance difference between and the hardware that's being cut down between the non-XT version and the XT version is rather small. So what this RX 9060 looks like to me is that your 9060 XTs, you might get some silicon that's just not quite good enough to meet that, but it's close. So you need some use for it, and there is your 9060 non-XT version. But if the quantities of deficient silicon aren't very high, it might not make sense to have that be a high volume DIY market product, and instead just make some OEM relationship to just, here's our, models that didn't quite cut it as an XT version and out there. So they didn't specifically say that, but that's kind of my read on the situation. Now, if you think about doing an AMD CPU-based build, you may have been looking at B650 chipsets, which still supported those. However, these are apparently reaching the end of production, with motherboard makers being asked to transition to the newer B850 chipsets, with inventory clearance scheduled for October. So if you were looking at B650s, those may be phasing out of the market, so hopefully B850 prices are good. We'll have to see what happens with that. Now, here's some other gigantic news, I think, because even if you're not interested in the ROG Xbox Ally handheld specifically, which we do now have the official launch date of October 16th being made official by Microsoft, but some of the things that they're doing with this, as an Xbox PC, could end up having some larger ramifications on the PC space. So I really wanted to read through these details and see if we could pull out anything interesting regarding this. So again, the big thing for this specific hardware is that October 16th release date. But again, we're getting affirmations again of the Xbox full screen experience, which is a dedicated experience purpose-built for gaming powered by Windows 11 and inspired by the console user experience. So the idea here is to make launching Windows as a gaming, Windows 11 in a gaming mode, which is probably going to play well with a controller. So maybe having like a console alternative on a TV. I'm trying to think beyond the handheld experience, right? So if this was made available to you, I always think about, like I have a good like home theater setup, and my PS5 is there, and it's super convenient. But if I want to use my high-end gaming PC on that, I can. But it's a lot less convenient to launch into that if I'm in more of I'm sitting on a couch with a controller kind of situation. So I would like to see this kind of thing expand into making Windows more convenient as like a console alternative in a living room environment, which I think could be interesting here. But in addition to that, experience, that front end, they're also making modifications to minimize background activity and defer non-essential tasks so that more system resources are dedicated specifically to gameplay. So potentially some performance improvements on that, which are probably especially noticeable in handheld devices that are so power constrained. But again, if that could come to desktop gaming PCs and just give us a more, dedicate everything to the game, certainly couldn't hurt, right? They're having a dedicated Xbox button that opens enhanced game bar overlay for Windows 11, making it easy to return home, browse your library, launch or quit games, chat with friends, and give you, for at least the ROG Ally experience, access to their armor crate. Now, for me, again, there's some things I would like to see work in Windows that you can do on gaming consoles. The fact that games on consoles can be, so easily suspended and then quick resumed, I would really like to see that kind of thing available on Windows, where I can just kind of send my game into like a sleeping state that I could then just resume back into immediately without having to go launch back through a bunch of splash screens and load up the game, etc. Now, that's not quite what this is, I think, but I'm hoping that Windows kind of starts to offer us those types of features, and maybe they're starting to build that type of an environment. It would be nice to see. There's an aggregate gaming library where they don't specifically mention Steam, but they do mention other leading PC storefronts, which I think is good. Ability to play natively, but via the cloud, or remote play from Xbox consoles. They talk about the the Z2A and Z2 Extreme processors that are in these handhelds specifically. But interestingly, these, especially I think it's the Ally X version, the high-end version, having the NPU inside of it also, I think, is going to have some interesting implications for what they can do with that. Because specifically, they do talk about some things that are coming in the future. These are upcoming, not going to be available for that October 16th launch. But they talk about using the neural processing unit to include things like automatic super resolution, AutoSR. Now, this is a system-level upscaler, not one that's integrated directly into games. Now, this actually is already available on Copilot PCs, but the problem with those is those are ARM-based laptops, right? Now, Digital Foundry has actually already tested out AutoSR on those Copilot laptops, those ARM laptops, and there's some really interesting results because this is actually quite different to things like DLSS and FSR. Instead, this is a spatial upscaler that's not integrated directly into the game. It takes a lower resolution input and uses an AI upscaling algorithm to give you a sharper, better looking output. And it does indeed make a sharper, better looking output, but it has some major downsides given it's not game integrated directly. But also has differences in performance cost, because it seems to, instead of having a performance cost to your game to run the upscale, it has a latency cost because it's having to go over to the NPU to do the upscale. So anyway, this is just going to be an interesting thing when that does eventually come to this. But again, they're talking about that more as a early next year feature rather than initially being available. They're also mentioning like highlight reels where AI can capture your highlights and know what they are and get you a short replay clip ready to go. I don't know if I'm that interested in that. Now, one thing I am interested in is them talking about advanced shader delivery. So on Windows systems, we've had, ever since DX12, we've had a lot of shader compilation stutter in a lot of games. And they're talking about having advanced shader delivery to these Ally X handhelds, where it preloads game shaders during download, on select games, and those should launch up to 10 times faster because they won't have to do a shader pre-compilation step, and they should run smoother and use less battery because, again, you're not having to run the shader compilation, etc., and more games supporting this. Now, I'm guessing that this is really just going to be for these Ally X devices because they know what that GPU is and they can do that. Again, this has been something I really enjoy when I game on my Steam Deck, is the fact that you don't have to deal with shader compilation. So in general, I really think the Windows experience regarding shader compilation and DX12 has got to improve. This seems like an improvement specifically for these devices. I would like to see a more general solution, though. Now, another thing specific to these handheld devices is that certain games are going to be listed as handheld optimized or mostly compatible, but also there will be a performance indicator, and these are separate things. The handheld optimization is talking about having games be able to launch with default controller inputs, be able to have text input convenient in a controller-based device, clear text legibility on the small screens, and launching with appropriate resolution settings to the device. Whereas the performance indicator is saying whether it will actually perform well at those default settings. So you'd really want to see both to know it's going to perform well on these systems. But in general, I think the fact that it looks like Microsoft could be pressuring game developers to make modes that work well on these, for handhelds, they're high performance, but, compared to a desktop PC, not high performance. I mean, I think this kind of initiative could be helpful for lower end systems in the long run to still be able to play the latest games if there are being optimizations made to make sure that they do run in some sort of reasonable mode on these handheld devices. So it'll be, again, interesting to see how all of this plays into the larger Windows gaming ecosystem. If you're interested on the specifics of the two versions of the Ally and Ally X, videocards.com has a helpful chart here that you could take a look at. Again, all my sources will be in the video description. But if you're looking for something even more powerful than the ROG Xbox Ally X, we do have that GPD Win 5. The GPD Win 5 is now getting an October 17th launch date, so one day after these Xbox Ally devices. And this is coming with the Ryzen AI Max Plus 395 Strix Halo-based processor. Now, this thing is absolutely insane to pack into a handheld, to the point where this device has like a clip-on battery thing and is honestly probably mostly designed to be run plugged in. But the amount of performance on offer with the 40 compute unit Radeon 8060S graphics should be kind of insane. So this is a device that I am very interested in. But again, I think the portability of it, given that high wattage that it would want to be running at to get its max performance, is certainly going to, raise some questions on who exactly is this for and who wants it. But, I'm kind of interested. Now, I was also seeing Geekbench leaks for a Valve Fremont APU system, which I was first wondering, is this going to be Valve coming in with a Steam Deck 2? But it's looking more to be maybe actually like a console-style device that's not going to be a mobile hardware. It looks to be a 6-core AMD custom APU with Radeon RX 7600 level graphics performance. But again, this is all based on reading into a Geekbench leak, so we'll have to see what comes of this. But there's some questions on whether Valve is working on something that's not a handheld, but more like their old Steam Machine idea, where you would have a small, SteamOS-based gaming PC that maybe in this case would be a good console alternative, like plugged into a TV or something like that. We'll have to see what's made with it. If it's RX 7600 level, though, the downside here is if we don't have FSR4 support, man, if you're plugging in on a big screen on rather modest hardware, I would really want to see high quality upscaling. So there is that. Now, in other AMD hardware news, we do have AMD to launch Ryzen 5 9500F desktop CPU, which is a 6-core Zen 5 CPU, the F indicating the integrated graphics are disabled. This is, again, coming from a Geekbench leak, though, so we don't really have any idea of exactly when this will launch. There's been some hints that maybe July, July GISA updates were hinting at these, meaning that the launch could be imminent, but we don't know exactly when. Anyway, we'll have to see where that would come in price-wise. It would have to undercut the 9600, noticeably to be worth it, given that you're losing the integrated graphics, which is always nice to have, but we'll have to see what comes of it. We do have MSI prepping a World of Warcraft Midnight Edition RTX 50 GPU, but it's likely going to be a 50 Super Series since this is scheduled for 2026. But anyway, if you're interested in a World of Warcraft themed 50 series GPU, maybe keep your eye out for that. And in other more game-related news, it's looking like Call of Duty Black Ops 7 will have an open beta in October. So I'll probably be benchmarking that when it does come available, so stay tuned for that. And that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget about the Surfshark link in the video description and or pinned comment. Have an excellent day, everybody.